My boyfriend and I have been together over a year and living together about 6 months. He's an extremely light sleeper. We never used to have problems, but I'm now on medicine that causes me to have more insomnia, so it's harder for me to fall asleep. Lately, we've gotten into fights because he's being absolutely unrealistic about any noise in general. I can't clear my throat quietly, sneeze or even yawn without him grumbling, groaning, or yelling at me at how loud I'm being. When I say yawn, I don't mean some exaggerated TV yawn, but literally the sound of me silently taking in and expelling air from my mouth 3-4x over the course of 2 hours sets him off. Sneezing is very rare and it's also quiet, but if I have to make any noise, I do it as silently as possible. But it's not enough for him. When I was extremely sick with the cold, he made me sleep on the couch because I was having a tough time sleeping without being able to actually blow my nose to breathe. But when he caught it a week later, I gladly let him sleep in the bed and help take care of him when he woke up in the night because he wasn't feeling well. I've argued with him multiple times that it's unfair for him to expect absolute silence and be mad over the air he hears from a yawn, but he just shuts me down and tells me to be quiet because I've disturbed him from being right on the edge of sleep. I understand that when you're half asleep you're particularly grumpy, we've all been there. But it winds me all the way up that I already constantly have to cater to the way he needs tons of space. Meaning I have to sleep pencil straight all night or on the side not facing him if I want to move my legs at all. And then this sound thing. I've had previous BFs who were heavy sleepers that snored, made lots of noise, and honestly that bothered me less than constantly having to be alert to his needs. He says that earplugs don't work and he only likes to hear the fan, so white noise is out of the question. I don't want to go downstairs because then I'll just stay up, and I don't want to keep taking melatonin every night, but I'm this close to not renewing our lease together next year if things don't change. It also makes me feel like if we got married and had kids he'd just expect me to be up all the time dealing with the baby, so he can sleep, or complaining about his sleep, or if one of us was to have a chronic sickness that we'd have to sleep in different bedrooms, because of how selfish he is. I'm a native French speaker from Canada, but I have a very pronounced Acadian/kayak accent. For those who don't know, it's pretty much a mix of French and English with some local dialect thrown in there. Pretty common in the Maritimes, where I still live. I'm perfectly bilingual in both languages. I started dating my boyfriend, who only speaks English, about 4 years ago and spent a lot of time with his family. They've all been really great, except for one of his aunts. She says she was a French teacher in Anglophone schools for over 40 years up until a year ago and even studied in France. And she insists on only talking to me in French. I agreed at first since I didn't want to be rude to his family, but it's getting super weird. I don't understand how she was able to teach kids English or how she comes up with most of her sentence. Like I have to guess 90% of whatever she says and hope I'm right because it makes absolutely no sense. Example, she said a la citrouille la tarte va bien dans ma bouche, which roughly translates to the pumpkin a pie goes well in my mouth, when she meant this pumpkin pie tastes delicious. She constantly criticizes my accent and tries to correct my pronunciation of certain words, and tells me I need to pick a language. When I accidentally say something in kayak, speaking proper Francais standard is actually getting harder for me since I've been only studying / working in English. So last night during dinner she started going on about how Acadians were uneducated and made no effort to properly learn a language, which is total BS, and obviously weirdly directed at me. For the rest of the night I stopped guessing what she was trying to say to me in French, acting like I didn't understand anything, and started correcting her as well, which was pretty much every single sentence she said. I wasn't trying to be rude or aggressive about it, but after a while she gave up on the French and ignored me for the rest of the night. Turns out she was super pissed and told everyone I was trying to embarrass her in front of everyone. Looking back, I think I might have taken it too far by not stopping after 2 to 3 sentences, and I feel bad. My boyfriend said I was being why, while his mom said she probably deserved it. Forgot to mention that I told her a few years ago that it's hard for me to fully speak proper French as I spoke kayak all my life. Tried to explain Acadian culture. She wasn't having it, surprise, and she stopped for a while but is now doing it again. So I recently got together with a guy from my hobby. He asked me out first and I had some doubts that we'd work together as a couple because of the age difference. He's 35 and I'm 22. So, in my apartment, since it's an old house that was originally a single-family house, there isn't much soundproofing. And the floors creak when people move. I've gotten used to the sound of the guy upstairs getting up at 4 a.m. since he starts work at 5. And the sound of the girls in the apartments to either side of mine watching telenovelas till midnight. Taking work calls all day and having friends over on weekend nights. I know when I play music or have friends over, some of the sound leaks through the walls. So I'd never get upset about hearing my neighbors because it goes both ways. So, when my boyfriend started coming over more often, he had complaints about the neighbors, which put me in an awkward place. He wanted to go speak to them or have me text them and I said no. For example, one of the early times he stayed over we went to bed around 10. He wanted me to ask my neighbor to turn down her TV. I said she didn't have it that loud and she turns it off at midnight anyway. At 4 a.m., he got very irritated with my upstairs neighbor getting up and cooking breakfast. I said that he would be done by 5 because that's when his shift starts. At 7 a.m., he was still trying to sleep in and the neighbor on the other side had some work calls that he said he couldn't sleep through. I offered him earplugs and he said he couldn't sleep with them in either. He wanted me to ask her to quiet down. He had similar comments every time he heard someone else in the building just living their life, especially if it was when he was in bed. I got frustrated with my boyfriend and told him, you can't expect to date a hot young 22-year-old and not want to deal with a 22-year-old's living situation. I don't know if you realize, but this is a normal apartment for someone my age. Hell, my neighbors are pretty great. Nobody's throwing loud parties on work nights. Nobody's having screaming fights. Nobody's having babies. The hot young part was in sarcastic air quotes because those were his words, not mine. He got irritated and asked why I was bringing age into it. And I said it's because he can't both want someone so young and also want someone with house kinda money. And he was being so out of touch with how normal people in their 20s live. He got really irritated with me bringing age into it. And even more annoyed when I'd respond to his neighbor complaints in the future with, okay, boomer. Or tell him that if he wanted me to have a rich person apartment, he could pay for it. It's not possible for me to get to his house on my own because I don't have a car and the buses don't go that far into the suburbs. So that would mean him driving 30 minutes from his house in the suburbs to pick me up, then an extra 30 to drive me to his house. Then an hour round trip early in the morning to get me home in time for work. It's a lot easier for him to visit me in the city. I am using boomer as a joke or a figure of speech to say acting out of touch and entitled to tell other people what to do. It is a common figure of speech to say, okay, boomer, to someone who is acting entitled regardless of their actual age. It's more of a mindset thing. I googled his property records for his house and he co-owns it with a woman who shares his last name. Holy shit. I don't know if she's his wife or ex-wife or what, but I'm out of here. I'm honestly freaking out right now, but I just gotta say, great big thank you to everyone who noticed red flags and made me question that. I've blocked his number. He can have fun figuring out where I went. My twin sister, May, and I are identical. At the end of our first year of college, I was in a car accident, and I ended up with a facial scar and major trauma. I started seeing a therapist because of the nightmares and the fact that I was panicking any time I got into a car. That led to me realizing there were some deeper issues, which we worked on. As part of that work, I got a physical. Started working with a dietitian to fix my diet and the smorgasbord of vitamin deficiencies it caused. I started working out, strength training 3 days and sprints or hit on 3 with our older sis. By the end of our first year of college, we had each gained about 30 pounds. By the end of the next year, I had lost half of it, but I was smaller at 134 pounds than my previous 120 because of the muscle mass. And that's been my size for the past half decade. I found a new beautician, and she gave me long layers to make my natural curls be curls instead of waves of frizz. I always wanted, but that my old one said would look bad and refused. I stopped bleaching it and let it go its natural dark blonde / light brown. I stopped spray tanning. Again, that's been my look for the past 5 years. I live in a rural area, and the internet isn't great. Things like FaceTime just aren't options, and I can't post a lot of pics on social media //C of it. This is relevant because a big issue is that May didn't see me over the quarantine. We talked on the phone a couple times a week, but it mostly revolved around her wedding planning. She got engaged before the Rona put us on lockdown. I wasn't her mo, so mostly I was being told decisions, not involved in the process. When it came to the bridesmaids' dresses, May sent our sister, Sil, and me a link and told us to get it in our size. Same with hair and makeup, but we had to arrange for a beautician because May's wouldn't do more than 4. And she wanted her friends at the appointment with her. Except she didn't do a bachelorette party with us, she did with her friends, or rehearsal dinner. So May didn't see any of us until the start of the wedding. She was livid. Apparently, she thought we would have stopped working out because of the Rona, even though we did it at home. Or that we would have stopped when she announced her engagement, so we didn't upstage her. She was mad because I didn't try to hide my scar and didn't tan, thought it would be implied. She made several snide remarks before throwing a drunk temper tantrum at the reception, basically accusing the 3 of us. But me ESP of trying to upstage her. I don't have that excuse //C. I was a DD so sober, but I, quite famously, have a low tolerance for angry or crying drunks. I told her, if you're so insecure, you should have got off your ass instead of expecting us to lay on ours to make yours look better. It only got worse. Our family is on my side //C. I didn't start it or do anything. But his family and her friends are giving me shit.